Most important thing in business is honesty, integrity, hard work, family. Never forgetting where we came from. Thank you, Charlotte.
Society and a community where that doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
You have both of your parents.
Yeah, that's a blessing. Because my
No, that's a
wife's
straight-
father is dead. He died. And my wife younger than me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so, and I realized that the other night, we just, you know how things just come to you, and I was like, damn, you know, you don't have both of your parents.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Oh, she doesn't have either of them.
no, she has one.
Okay.
But still, it's like,
Yeah.
I have both.
Yeah. That's a blessing. I was talking about you yesterday in my Black politics class,
Mm-hmm.
and we were talking about the IRA law. We were talking about the whole Kim K coming, and a lot of people were kind of misinformed and misunderstood as to what she represented.
Mm-hmm.
And so we was having a conversation about. I took them all the way back to when you did the documentary, the HBO documentary. And I'm always excited when I go back to that documentary and I hear the lack of empathy that you had. I heard the immaturity that you had at the time.
Right.
I heard the lack of faith that you had at the time. And then to see you now, I said, listen, so incarceration doesn't kill everybody.
Right.
Incarceration doesn't destroy everybody. There are people who have made that their own, and they making their pain pay them. Because that's one of the things that I say, no, pain has to pay me.
Right.
You know, you go through a life of pain and heartache, you snap out of it. Because at some point in your journey, you snapped out of it and said, oh, wait a minute. It was like the aha moment. This ain't me.
For me, it was just a matter of just being me. Like, I realized that I never forget, like, when I read George Jackson, the Solidarity Brothers, and just was seeing how he was able to articulate himself, how his thoughts during the time when it was published in the 70s were widely accepted globally. And reading his backstory, how he just came to prison at the age of 18, got an indeterminate life sentence like I did, and how I was amazed at his, not just his intellectual prowess, but that someone who was going through the similar what I went through can be valued. Like when you go global and you're still inside of a cell, that means that you can be in the same situation and be valued by the world outside of white America, right? Because his views and his genius was globally commercialized and accepted, impact. So for me, that was like my aha moment, not in the sense that I really changed. I just stopped getting in the way of me being me. You know, I
got out your own way.
Got out my own way, stopped incarcerating myself to impress my peers. Because that's all I was doing. Like I always tell people I took my pre-SATs when I was 11. I was taking college courses at Howard University when I was 11. And nobody's really celebrated that. You know, people was like, oh yeah, you smart, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, it wasn't like celebrated as somebody when they got the new Gucci sweatsuit. And you know, the new Turbo ZX and the Box Maxima and the Cressida and you know, the big Dookie chain. And so, or just somebody.
You remember all that?
Yeah. Or just somebody who just shot and killed somebody. Like
that's celebrated in our
that level of respect that they were given, you know, for being fashionable, being violent, you know, or just sexually conquesting women. So, you know, so I wanted to be what was celebrated. But once I encountered George, that level of discipline and militancy that he had, but the intellectual genius that he had, and then he had a world view, which was kind of like rare. That's why I love him and James Baldwin so much, because they can critique. They have the ability as thinkers and writers to critique white America and racism scathingly, but they never fed into race, you know, the race ideology. Like George his thing was communism, so he had more like, he looked at it from like, it's not a race thing, it's economics. Whereas though James Baldwin, he just was like more of a humanitarian, you know, so he looked at it from the perspective that race is a social construct that's created by people with an agenda. And he just didn't buy into it, even though he can critique it, but he didn't buy into it in the sense that now I can only have allegiance and alliances with people that what we have constructed as black, which don't even include people from Africa who are Dominican or in the Caribbean or in Europe or and still from Africa, you know. So when you buy into that racial social construct of black and white, then it's like black just means those of us who were enslaved in America.
Okay.
Right? So for me, you know, it just was a progress, but it all began with George Jackson, Solidarity Brother, you know, and I think like James Baldwin kind of took me over the top, because for years I wouldn't read his stuff because he was gay, you know, and just progressing it within myself and starting to realize like nobody that's gay ever did anything to me. Like I was never molested, raped, you know, like I used to sell drugs to him, the business was always good. So then I had to question myself, like, why do I have this disdain for people because what they choose to do with their sexuality? Just like if I'm gonna say, okay, this guy, he's heterosexual, so I'm just gonna accept him because of that. But everything else, he's a deadbeat dad, he beats and abuses women, he destroys his community. But this guy, just because he's attracted to men, he made no pass on me. I'm just automatically going to disregard everything about him, you know. So and so for me, maturing in that aspect of just loving myself and loving being open to love everyone, accept people for how they are, not just pigeonhole them into certain aspects of their character. That was like the most, I believe, beneficial part of my development as a human being. And James Baldwin impacted me, and he impacts me, his writings, and informs me and inspires me in a way which I've never been besides with George Jackson.
Okay. So we did not get the opportunity to say who we are here with today, and I am here with the amazing, extraordinary Halim Flowers. If you don't know him, as I always say, Google him. We're here at the Halcyon Arts Lab, where he makes magic happen, where he continues to make magic happen. He's already been making magic. And so, Halim, I like to just do like an icebreaker. This is not going to be a formal interview. We just gonna talk, brother and sister. We just gonna kick it, you know, like we do. We just gonna do that. So I'm gonna ask you some. I'm gonna say a word, and you going to, in maybe a sentence or two, you're going to expound on that word.
Okay.
Education.
Education. The etymology of education is the word educe, and educe means to extract out. So education to me is not what teachers put inside of students, but what teachers put inside the students to bring the genius that's already instilled in them out.
Okay. Wealth.
Wealth in the capitalist society has been diminished to a parochial perception of promissory notes, or what we know as money, which is nothing but a medium of exchange. Which to me, wealth is economic capital, cultural capital, which can be embodied like intelligence, mannerisms. You have the objectified objects that represent wealth, and you have social capital. So wealth to me is very extensive. It can be your fitness, your health, your mental wealth, you know, your emotional wealth. So for me, wealth is internal and external, and I believe that in our society we give too much weight to the external things, and we don't realize, as I realize now having access to people with money, that they are far less joyful and content with life and living than people who have less monetary access to money, physical Federal Reserve promissory notes.
Okay. Parents.
Parents are the next thing beneath God in respect to stewardship to children. And parenting is bigger than just inside of the home with those who we physically birth, because as it takes a village to raise a child, all of us who are adults in our communities and our neighborhoods are quasi-parents to all of the children that we encounter. So, and it's like I said, after God, it's the greatest stewardship amongst humanity and animals and insects on the planet.
Religion.
Religion, I'm an etymologist, man. The etymology of religion comes from the word re, which means like to do over. And religion comes from the word like liturgy, but it means like to retie, like to re-knot, right? So how I correlate that with the practical meaning is that religion is something that people use rituals, physical rituals, internal rituals, garments, something that they repeat over and over. Maybe it's a place like a synagogue, a masjid, or a church, to get reacquainted with their creator, themselves, and their principles. So for me, my religion, being Muslim, my religion being Islam, is very intricate in my life, but I'm not a religious person. I'm more like a spiritual person. So, but it's a set of beliefs and a set of practices and rituals that people use to reacquaint themselves with their moral constitution and moral values, and to counterbalance the worldly influences.
Okay. And the last word is the word that I know that you always talk about. It's one of your favorites to talk about, and I want to know why. Love.
Love is so difficult to explain in 1 or 2 sentences. However, love is, the example I can give is the sun, right? Because we can't see God in a sense with like our own